Yeah, and thanks all of you for being here tonight and also for being with us. I think maybe we'll just start by introducing ourselves and our relationship to this film, Cabrini, whatever you feel like what ties you to being here tonight. Is that okay? Do you want to start maybe, Phenom?
Okay. Yes, I survived Cabrini. I was actually that little boy. I'm not that little boy, but that's who I was when I was in Cabrini. The little guy she kind of had a relationship with. So about maybe a year after his age is when we left Cabrini.
What year was that?
I don't remember. We escaped.
Okay.
Yes.
Where did you go?
First place we went was Humboldt Park, and then we went to West Town, then we went to Rogers Park, then we went to Oak Park, and now I'm in Hyde Park, Washington Park. A lot of parks.
Maybe I'll just say too, I'm the director of the National Public Housing Museum, and so if you come to our temporary space, which is offices at 625 North Kingsbury, you'll see an old medicine cabinet from a bathroom from Cabrini. And in that space, we sort of talk about the multiple mythologies and also the realities of sort of how public housing looms so large in people's minds, both as a sort of fear and loathing about race and poverty, but also in sort of a shout out to the real Ruthie Mae McCoy, who in 1987 was an inhabitant who lived a resident in the Grace Abbott homes, and she had called 911 and said somebody was coming through the medicine cabinet, and nobody believed her, and then she was found murdered, 2 days later. And so that was sort of the catalyst for the Candyman mythology, along with other, the Clive Barker story and things like that. And so maybe I'll just stop there now and hand it over to Michael.
Cool. Thank you. And you'll have to pardon me. I get really charged up sometimes when whiteness is censored. So these kinds of things can be a little triggering for me. And I bring you greetings from our comrades in Oakland, California. My connection, I suppose, to the film or to what it's centered around is I worked when I was working primarily in housing, I worked in the first leg of the Cabrini-Green redevelopment project. So it was my role to engage with, interview, let's say, families from a list of 400 to fill 37 spots in some brand new condo building that was luxury. This test. So that's my connection to the film. And then in addition to that, what I work in primarily now is cinema and the performing arts. So I'm also looking at other things, the way that people are represented in the film, as well as who gets to make the film.
Great, thanks. Nick?
My name is Nick Rafferty, and I'm a Chicago-based location manager. I work on film and television projects here. My connection to Candyman is actually in association with the next version of the film, which was in production in Chicago this summer. I first got contacted by Jordan Peele's company, and they said they were coming to Chicago to remake, in a way, the next version of this story. Nia DaCosta was the director. She's a marvelously talented young filmmaker, and one of the first things that we did was survey Chicago, and she was immediately drawn to the Cabrini-Green neighborhood, and that was the beginning of the journey, a process of discovery, and it ended up transforming the script, I think, on some level, and we'll see what the results are when the new version is released next summer.
Cool. I actually want to go back to something that you said, Michael, about sort of the trigger of when whiteness is really centered. And can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So this film was created by uh, 5 producers, 2 writers, and a director, white males, all of them. That's like hella violent, you know? And it's really weird to like center the film in a conversation like this, as we do, and I think this is actually brilliant that we're doing this. Yet, still at the same time, it's like what we're dealing with is this person's like fragility, right? There's a line in the film actually which I happen to love. Do you fear the pain or what is beyond, right? So I guess that's kind of like what's triggering is the gaze, the forced perspective of where we are and where I must be in order to encounter and engage these stories that are also familiar.
Yeah. I mean, I think something that earlier we were talking about is the context in which this film sort of came out, right? Cabrini is like loomed large in the popular mythos of what it meant to be poor, what it meant to be black in the United States. We at that time, Chicago had 3 of the 5, wealthiest neighborhoods in the entire country, and also 10 out of 16 of the poorest census tracts. And Cabrini was not unique, actually, as a housing complex across the country. But what was incredibly unique about it was that it was so close to the Gold Coast, like sort of ritzy neighborhoods. And it was one of the few places in a deeply segregated city and in a country where white people would still actually be able to, come across actually people of color. And so it sort of, and there was at that same time, Saturday Night Live had a recurring character who was a spoof of a pregnant, teenager called Cabrini-Green, sort of Harlem Watts Jackson, and Good Times was also sort of centered there, right? And so this idea of Cabrini was a stand-in in many ways for like what it meant to be poor and black, and to sort of have it centered in this perspective, did it bother you as somebody who had spent time living in Cabrini? Did this film bother you in that way, or like what is your sort of emotional sort of response to it?
I felt a bunch of things. Just looking at the old buildings and looking at how dirty it was and how people let it get like that. How did they expect us to survive? A lot of times those elevators didn't work, so them going to the elevator and them saying, "Oh, come on, let's walk up," and they went to the 4th floor. Just imagine my mom carrying groceries or the laundry up to the 9th floor with no elevator. It was just those little things like, damn, how did I make it out of there? And in my growing and learning that it was a project.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's important to say that when you say how did they let it get like that, the they is like the CHA, right, and HUD, and the sort of deferred maintenance of generations of
There
sort
was
of lack of care and attention, the sort of surveillance without
Right.
any safety, right?
What I wanted to say, what I said out there was that each one of those buildings was a neighborhood. And that neighborhood had 2 garbage chutes. And all of that garbage from that neighborhood is sitting downstairs waiting for somebody to come pick it up. And they wouldn't. And so it was stacked. And so the rats were super huge. Just the conditions. The conditions were whatever. But half of that I do blame CHA. The other half I blame us for accepting this and living in these conditions for so long. When they were in the apartment and she had the baby, and she said, I'm not gonna let them get my baby. That was my mother. She was like that. But then I thought about, how did you get in Cabrini in the first place? That wasn't really a place for progressive growth. It wasn't, from what I saw. So no, I didn't necessarily get angry, but I did feel, I felt the benefit of our pain. Sort of like my brother got arrested all these years for selling marijuana, and now it's legal. I lost about 15 years with my brother because of weed, and now there's a dispensary in like right over there. So I can see the I see a lot. I mean, you know, it's like the Matrix. It's all green to me now. I'm Neo.
And sort of, I guess in the film, the university is sort of the people who are benefiting from the pain too, right? But I'm wondering, in the sort of reboot of this story, Nick, you know, now it's really being told by people of color. And were you engaged in talking about this film and relationship, or like, what was the sort of conversations about sort of the original Candyman and then sort of the reboot?
One thing to keep in mind, which I think is really important, is there's the film that's written on the page, and that's the script. And then there's the film that we shoot in production. And then there's the film that evolves in the editing room. And so Candyman right now is still a work in progress. And in fact, our director and Jordan Peele are still making it. But I can tell you a little bit about the conversations that were had on set. And really, Candyman is a story about Chicago in 2020. One of the interesting moments that happened when we were scouting is we were touring the Cabrini-Green neighborhood. We were capturing it as it exists currently, and the city had just approved these scooters, which appeared everywhere, all over the streets, certainly in River North. And it was just so interesting to kind of see, you know, this modernity against the backdrop of, you know, the past. If you go through the neighborhood now, and we scouted it and walked it many times, there is something somewhat eerie about it, something almost sacred about it. It almost feels like a burial ground, the way that it's sectioned off. There's a lot of fields that are sort of fallow. There's no development in certain sections. Giant swaths of land that is very valuable has been empty for years and years. This is something that immediately captured the imagination of Nia and Jordan, and it was something that I think propelled the story forward. They were very interested in authenticity. They were very interested in capturing this idea of gentrification, this idea of identity, who shapes that, how you come to realize who you are. There's a component of the art world, which is really interesting, how art sort of appropriates things and ideas. I mean, even the film is another play on that. One of the things about Jordan Peele as a filmmaker is that his films always have something to say. And I will be very interested, as I'm sure all you will as well, to see kind of how Candyman is received and how it continues this conversation.
Yeah. Michael, you are a storyteller now, and outside earlier you were sort of saying, well, you know, like all story, there is maybe no authenticity in a kind of way, that stories are always sort of performatively sort of telling and retelling. Can you say a little bit maybe about the work that you're doing now and how you are confronting issues of race and class and, you know, sort of, I mean, you worked on the redevelopment and sort of housing issues. How are you engaged in that now?
So, yeah, seen a lot. So, the arts and redevelopment are in bed with one another, right? In some of the developments that I worked in, my role was effectively like a proxy, the lead on developing like cultural partnerships. here in Chicago, but definitely in Oakland, like finding who are the best, who are the people who could launch like the greatest offense to or the greatest defense to what it is that we're here to build within their town. Let's make them partners, right? Let's give them a space in a empty raw space. We called it a raw gallery. Let's let them put a canvas up on a concrete slab, and they'll think they have a gallery. We're being kind with them, and so they won't burn our shit down, right? So, as a byproduct of that, and exiting redevelopment, I work as an arts administrator, centering the Black narrative from from a Black perspective, I suppose. But I wanted to follow up on something that you said. I think it's like, it's admirable that you would say that it was on, or residents of Cabrini who are within that condition, that they're accountable for their circumstances. I think it's on all of us. I think, like, I said to you guys earlier, like, where the white woman lived in the film, that was Sandburg Terrace. That's 6 blocks away, right? So all of us, not just non-racialized people, but racialized people as well, I really think it boils down to all of us and our responsibilities. So with what I'm doing with art, I am centering racialized perspectives in the telling of stories. But really, I think it leads back to accountability for telling our own stories, and then also reclaiming our centers.
Yeah.
Can I add to that?
Yeah,
What I saw in the movie that was kind of dynamic that I never saw when I was younger was the fact that the Black people in the movie was telling the 2 ladies, yo, something is plaguing us. And even when she had that personal conversation with the little boy, it's just a myth. It's just and we've been saying this for the longest, that poverty and violence, and we don't necessarily own it. It's haunting us. And the fact that she was able to empathize and be in that spot where people don't believe you. Oh, this is a dope movie. Now that I'm thinking about it, wow, like she became us, the victim of her depression and all these other things that was just in her head. And that scene where the murderer's here and you couldn't really see him on the camera. We have that in the family. We have that in our culture where we're being attacked by certain things, and you can't really see it until you step over here and realize, oh, wow, this is an attack. For us to be blocked in the middle of the Gold Coast and all these wonderful places and couldn't really touch that, that's kind of like a prison. The food that we ate wasn't the same food that was 6 blocks away. So it was like that snow globe. We were in that, and everybody else was doing their thing. So the fact that she got in that if I felt justified that she was able to see the pain of what really goes on in those projects. And then lastly, at the end, they all showed up together. And that's real indicative of our culture. They showed up at that funeral together to discard the myth.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's true. I like
Together.
that.
They all
Yeah.
came together in a line, and I thought, like, oh, this ain't real. Oh, no, it is. Because I can hear Mama saying, get ready, we about to go. Everybody going, we all going together. And that's real. And the fact that the little boy dropped it, it's just so symbolic. We need to re-see this movie. You're right.
No, and I really like this sort of linking of what it means to give an account, and then the question that you raised about who is accountable, right? Like accountability and account. And there is a lovely book by Roberta Feldman called The Dignity of Resistance, where she also looks at sort of allyship and solidarity of feminists and sort of women living in public housing. And so it is sort of interesting how then Helen is the one who's able to, at least sort of reach out, and through her sort of black women friends, comes to some sort of understanding, perhaps. I mean, and Trevor then is left with the myth and also what he can do with it, right?
Well, we know what Trevor did with it. Trevor went and found a woman that was more fragile.
Yeah. Yes.
That bad truth right
I also
there.
like how you brought up, I mean, you're a poet, so I like
yeah,
things
I
you
do
say.
this.
I like how you brought up the, what did you say, the trash chutes?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And in another kind of way, it was always you, Helen. It was always you, right? Like, this is yours.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like also at the end, I like how you referenced that this was the funeral of, and then there was another funeral. It was a reckoning as well. It was a reconciliation. Like, this belongs to you. This was always yours to contend with. You have always needed healing. Have you ever taken the time to heal? You have always needed healing. Right.
Yeah.
I think it was powerful that it was told from Helen's perspective, because we wouldn't have really owned it if it was a black person's story, because we go through that pain. So to see Helen trying to get her degree and do something great, really get sucked into a world where all of her everything was stripped from her. Man, that's yeah, that was good. That was great. That was great. And not to say that I enjoyed seeing the pain. I enjoyed seeing the when she went back into her world after really understanding what this was and looking at the faces of the people at the dinner table and how they were just so nonchalantly living without the depression and without being haunted. I thought that was awesome. But I do think that story needs to be told from a different corner if we're able to really receive that perspective.
Yeah.
I thought it was hot from her story, though.
I thought what was really cool also is the university's role in manufacturing these myths,
Yeah.
right? And these scholarly white males, right? And so I was really fascinated when you said that you all are turning your gaze or that towards the art world. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you say more about that? Are you allowed to?
A little bit.
Okay.
Well, some of the locations that we filmed at in Chicago were two art galleries. We did a lot of research into Chicago's contemporary art scene. We actually filmed a scene at the Museum of Contemporary Art, and we got permission from Virgil Abloh to do the scene in the gallery. So I would say that Nia and Jordan are very much immersed in this idea of how art interprets culture and how there's this feedback. I think it's going to be super interesting how the film, which is in and of itself art and entertainment, and you were talking about how those two worlds merge, how it comments on that in a very sort of contemporary way, in a way that I think talks about that struggle maybe between money and art, in the same way that there's a struggle between rich and poor, and sort of whose perspective and whose point of view kind of prevails, and how those decisions are made and who gets to make them. I mean, all that I think is an undercurrent in the story. I mean, certainly these are all things that I saw in production, and how it's ultimately revealed in the film, I think will be really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think that what has been interesting so far on the stage, too, is both the sort of cynicism and complicity of art and artists, the university, but then also perhaps like the radical potential and the resistance and the resilience of people, where it also becomes the tool of sort of liberation or sort of understanding, right? And so I guess I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that also in your current work, or how you're thinking about that.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like my corn is popping real quick. I just, like my it's like wow. You know how deep that is, that lady was being attacked by a black man, right? And then she was actually the attacker. I'm still trying to figure out. Was she the attacker? Right? Because that's real. That's like a synonym or a metaphor for, I don't know, the police or whoever attack us and don't think that it's them, that there's another person doing this. There's another something that's doing this, and the whole time it was you, right? So I see that. But what I saw mostly and what I use today is that inside of Cabrini-Green, it was looked at as like a ghetto. And I mentioned this earlier before, how I read the book Night by Eli Wiesel and learned how they came up with Spin the Dreidel inside of the Holocaust. A game came out of a terrible time. That means that even within hell-like conditions, you can still find peace in heaven. And so I took that, and with Cabrini-Green being such a down, looked upon place, and me coming from there, I know there are beautiful people that came from that building or all those buildings, that neighborhood. I know this for a fact. So I can see both sides and how it's looked at from the outside and what it actually is in reality. And I look at every youth or that I work with like that. You have an X-Man quality. They may look at you like you're a vagrant or you're disruptive, but I know inside there's beauty. And so I'm able to find that because I know first that there's beauty in the ugly.
I think also something for me that was so important in the film is that the sort of original myth of the Candyman is the story of someone who is a descendant of an enslaved person, right? Who actually finds love and then is essentially lynched by a mob, right? And then how that is tied to the projects and to segregated housing. And I just kept thinking of this book by Richard Rothstein, The Color of Law, where he does this deep analysis of public housing and its placement and how it is a legacy of slavery also in this country, and and demands sort of housing justice as a remediation and reparation for that history. And so I think it's important, like in this mythos, how that is tied also. Just want to throw that out there. Yeah.
I think that's the part I really didn't like.
Oh, interesting. Say more.
I didn't like the 1890 myth. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't like the 1890 myth part of that because I didn't connect with that. I didn't connect with a guy falling in love and then being chased because he fell in love until I saw the faces of the guys who got him, and I said, "Oh, that's a lynching."
Yeah.
He was lynched. And I didn't see that before as a child. And so the whole 1890 part, I felt that this is the part that's coming from white writers. Knowing that bathroom, I've seen that bathroom where they came in. I heard you looking for Candyman, bitch. Sweets written in crap. That's movie. But the way that those toilets look is real. And so I was fighting with my suspended disbelief, like, oh, that ain't even real. But oh wow, it was like that. How was it like that? And so it was hard trying to discern which world was mine in this.
Yeah, it's also interesting in this reckoning. I feel like we are in a period of reckoning. How the way that Hollywood has treated people, racialized people, in the disruption that is occurring right now thanks to streaming or technology. Regardless of their intention, to them it's just about market share. I don't believe that they care that much. Yet, however, still the affects of that are greater equity and positive imagery of self. So thinking about that. Oh, yeah. And so then there's this, I mean, Cabrini, the places, our places, this land that we call America versus the one that's down there that's not in as great of a position, right? We throw our things away there, da, 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 da. What are you doing on this side of town after dark? What are you doing in this country? These things. But as someone in Oakland, California, one of my favorite things about Michigan Avenue is the Dusable Bridge. So, you know what I mean? Kind of like embedded in the sequence, like in the code, is the fact that we built all this shit. That this was like a Haitian trading post that developed the Mag Mile and all of these buildings that are constructed upon. So yeah, we own and that's what we do. We normalize, we cleanse the soil, we cleanse the air, we cleanse the water. That's what melanin does. And we've got equity in these other things as well. So I think what we also I want to be mindful that we reclaim and that we own and we sustain our recognition of this relationship that we have with this soil. Because we made all this, I believe.
Yeah. No, that's deep. And we often start events, and we should be starting all events by acknowledging the Potawatomi, the Miami, the Illinois people whose land we now occupy, and to make those connections between the sort of displacement of people, both in that period and the displacement of public housing residents because of sort of gentrification and urban renewal, right? And so that's sort of how do we sustain the land and how do we sustain these stories, that make those connections, I think is really important.
What actually happened with Cabrini-Green, our families were, I don't know a word for it. But they got vouchers for houses.
Section 8, yeah, it's like the voucher system.
But the process, you have this world called Cabrini, and the stores outlined or box us in, but all of your family is within striking distance, within 2 blocks. Your whole family, your whole world, your friends, your cousins, your uncles, your brothers, both of your grandmothers, that dad's mother and mom's mother, everybody's in this place. And then they get these vouchers to move into a house from the projects. Who's not gonna take that? The vouchers went as far as Iowa.
Yeah.
And so there comes a choice whether you want to stay with your family or live better. And so I don't know. I don't want to be a victim or nothing because we, like I said, we survived it. But those were unthinkable things that we were faced with ever since public aid came and the fathers had to leave the house in order to maintain some sort of food in the house. And dads out there now creating gangs, and now we saw a lot of stuff, but we survived. And I think the Humanities Festival, right? The Humanities part of it is allowing us to really digest these happenings of what made us who we are, but progressively. I think it's awesome to really look back at all of the different dynamics of whose fault it was and whose fault it is currently. How long are we going to talk about what happened versus what's going to happen? How can we progress it? How can we not let another project happen? Because the projects are still here. It's just not in that tall ass building.
Yeah.
They are on the south side. They're in neighborhoods that people don't want to go in, that I go in, that people are afraid of, that they're some of the most beautiful people in the world. Chance the Rapper came from Roseland. It's a lot of murders over there. They love Chance. And think about our stars. So what is happening, I am seeing, is that these spots like this are getting smaller. And we're starting to cross borders with each other. And we're starting to open up and acknowledge whose fault is what fault. We don't want to hurt anybody for it. We just want everybody to own their part. What's your part? My part is I kept up some of the stereotype because I was ignorant. But once I learned what I was doing, I had to change my behavior. We have learned terrible behavior that was pumped in us by our conditions, by our movies. We didn't write this, but this movie was blasted to us. A lot of the sitcoms were written by people that are not like us. The names of the characters were created by people who not like us, who would have never named this guy T-Bone. What? So our stories were siphoned from us and regurgitated to us and sold to us in movies like that. But we were able to, through our art, tell the real story. And like people like Tiff Beatty, to have that specific young lady in this position is now you're changing stuff. Now you're doing stuff, man. Yeah. So I want to say big ups just to this whole event. Thank y'all for staying. Thank you for letting us have this dialogue. This is real change, real talk.
Did we want to open up maybe to some Q&A? How are you all feeling? Yeah.
All right. We're going to open it up for Q&A. We just ask that everyone remember to speak into the mic and keep questions as brief as possible so we can hear from as many people as we can fit into our time. So if anyone has a question, just raise your hand. We'll run the mic up to you. We have one on this side.
Yeah, and if you want, introduce yourself so that we can know who we're talking to.
Hi, yes, my name is Jacob. I'm with the Shortlist Committee here with the festival. And my question is about what you were kind of touching with before we went to this, about kind of balancing the past that has been kind of co-opted by people who are not us. And then also kind of talking about still focusing on the future. But how do we still kind of balance that? Is like, there's a lot of what you're saying about kind of taking back these stories to kind of telling them through personal experience in all different races, but also still saying we're here in the present and talking about these things in the future and how we could go beyond this. And maybe kind of talk about how you guys as artists kind of go back and forth on rationalizing these two sides.
I just want to make sure I understand the question.
Maybe how do artists or any of us be able to balance the sort of going back in time and telling the story and then also looking forward to create a collective future, maybe? Is that sort of close?
Yeah, essentially, like, we always have, like, kind of this focus on just, like, looking into the past, but we don't always see so much, like, more present narratives because we're still trying to process what had happened.
Yeah.
So kind of just, like, how we're balancing, like, these two things, while not forgetting the past, but still looking to the present and the future.
Well, the truth is, brother, to say that you're African American, in my opinion.
Oh, no, I wasn't saying that.
No. This is my answer to your. To have the title African American is a people who doesn't have anything and does the most with that. Yeah. So we constantly look back, and the arts don't allow us to forget it. When we rhyme, we're telling our story in the rhyme. We are each other's CNN. Mm-hmm. Without the fake news, right? But we can't forget either. When we live in, like, just seeing Dr. Dre is a billionaire, man. He made it. But then, police came and almost arrested him for standing in front of his own house. So we constantly get reminded. So we can't really forget it. The story, we live it every day still today. My partner K Love, who's a poet, really communicates the current state. Like, our kids on the way to school could see a drive-by and get marked tardy for being late, where other kids in different neighborhoods, more affluent neighborhoods, get counseling for that. And so that's every day. So we communicate it through the art, and then we are able to bend the art to heal us. So it's medicine. And if you were like a fly on the wall in our type of open mic or jam sessions, you would get some crying through the blues. That's where the blues came from, man. We it's all in the music. The hip hop, the real hip hop and poetry and stuff, that's how we balance it. But there's a lot of fakeness that's pumped into that to try to water that down too.
Michael, do you want to get in there?
So I told Tiff, I promised her that I was going to say what I thought about the whole thing, and I'm going to say it. I think it's all a hoax. I'm one of these people. Like, I'm it's all a hoax, right? So with what you're speaking about, sometimes people put like the artists I also deal with like a lot of academics, literary artists, these sorts of people, thinking people is who I work with. Sometimes people they try to put us in like the Afrofuturist category, and we don't really believe in that. Like, it's cool, it's a cool thing, and like I get it. I get the quantum physics side of it. I understand the idea of like punishing someone by stealing their time. So we're talking about equity in the future. That I'm aligned with. But then when you just make it a thing about, at least Afrofuturism, a thing about just art, it's kind of like, and so like we think when we're talking about these things, we're talking about like the present, as a matter of fact. Like, this is how it is right now. It's like you might not see it because you have this veil on, and you know, this is what's happening right now. In that spirit, I believe that one way of looking at it is that we need things. We need them to provide a thing, or we must do this because when we do that, then we get our dividend, whether it's by way of selling our labor, whether it's by way of whatever that it is, whatever the agreement is within the nation that we pledge our allegiance to. The fact is that we're still here regardless of how much we've been given on this block or how much we've not been given 6 blocks away. So to me, I think it's about like centering. I don't mean to be like the California hippie guy up here, but like, I'm really going to sound like it by using this word, but centering abundance, reclaiming our centers of these things that we need to tithe into that are only taking from us to lift up something else, and shattering that one center into 17 centers, right? This idea that each of those buildings was a neighborhood. So shattering that, we need to learn to protect these centers. But I guess that to me is the thing, is reclaiming the fact that we are still, we have been, we have no idea what we will be, but just that we are is enough. To me, that's, I think, kind of like what it is. When we get into like not having enough, even when we get into resiliency, even when we get into racialized excellence, to me, that's all kind of, and this is only my perspective that I happen to be sharing with you. It might not mean anything at all. These are actually questions that I'm asking myself. But I think for me, I think, and some of the people that I hang out with, it's like, yeah, no, what if we just change this whole thing, and like what's in the center is that we've got enough. We can sustain ourselves. We don't have to sell our labor. We'll get by with what it is that we have.
Can I maybe also say, that was very beautiful. I think from the National Public Housing Museum standpoint, we live in a very selectively amnesiac society. And, in order for us to actually solve the most pressing issues of today, like, for example, housing insecurity, we have to ask ourselves, how did we get here? In order for us to create a different kind of collective future. And sort of part of that is harnessing the power of memory, of place, and the demand that never again will a single story be told as if it's the only one, and being much more capacious and abundant with the stories that we tell and circulate, and be really astute students of history in order for us to be living in the present, the real present, and not be telling us a constant lies about how we are here together. But, do you want to jump in on this answer, Nick? I'm not sure if there's other hands, too.
Yeah, I think about this a lot. I think about, art's role in society, how it overlaps with politics, especially what's going on. I guess there's two thoughts that I have. One conclusion that I've come to is that art is completely necessary to move the conversation forward in ways that maybe politics follows. I feel like in film, in art, there are certain conversations that can be had somewhat subtly or sometimes hitting you over the head with it, but how they're presented and the audience that they're trying to reach art can be transformative. It can push the conversation forward. It can push the needle. And I think in this day and in this time, the role of art is really important as a counterweight to politics, as sort of this way to react, have a different point of view. I think artists are more important now than ever. I'm sure they've said that throughout history as well. But on that note, and being in Chicago and working with filmmakers who are storytellers, one of the things I really believe in is that Chicago is probably one of the most important sites to tell these stories. And this is, something that I think the issues that this city wrestles with on a daily basis. When you look at the headlines in our newspapers, whether it has to do with violence or racial inequity or trying to solve problems from the past and figure out a bridge to the future, I don't think there's any other city that really is as American as Chicago in trying to wrestle these things. And you can watch the news and you can listen to the president and everyone talk about this stuff, but it's really where the rubber meets the road here in Chicago. And I think that artists and filmmakers that really engage in kind of this discourse, this is a great place to do it. And I'm so happy to work with filmmakers who have a point of view, who are trying to engage culturally on these issues that are kind of plaguing the country right now. Chicago's where it's at,
Yeah. Is there one more question here? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Alice, and I enjoy supporting the Humanities Festival and all of its programs. My favorite line in the movie was when the guy spoke about rumors, because he said we need rumors, and we do need rumors so that we can be in fear of everybody instead of getting to know them. And so we can stereotype, and so we can close down schools and close down legendary schools and rename them, and that's really devastated in subtle ways Chicago lately. I was wondering, what did you think of that line about rumor and how we need them?
You said it. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh. This hoax thing. Yeah. I don't have anything to say.
Yeah, I paid attention to that. I did see him say that we need rumors. That's the only way he's able to be alive is through the rumors.
I agree with you.
Man,
So,
okay.
Yeah.
This is what I say. I mean, we have complained about the news and the garbage that they have been showing for the longest. And then we get YouTube, and then we start showing worse garbage than them. I think dialogue is healthy. I think rumors are healthy because it causes us to dialogue. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things, you really said it so beautifully, right? When you talked about how the closing of the schools, right? How do the police stay in power? It is, how power stays in power is through the circulation. It's currency. is lies, untruths, rumors, urban myths, things like that, and fear, right? And so, the sort of idea of friendship, the idea of generosity, the idea of truth is actually, an act of resistance, against that. And so, yeah, I agree with what you said.
Yeah, and some of those rumors of poverty and our definitions of greatness and things like that are off. And for us, it's a rumor that we're gonna come together. We shall overcome. We're gonna succeed. We're gonna be whatever people. Um, in hip hop, one of the top artists threw out a concept that turned into a rumor. It was that hip hop is dead. Nas said that hip hop is dead. Immediately, that made those who hip hop was real to and still alive say something. Whenever he was saying hip hop was alive, he got no response. But the fact that to say it was dead, the audacity, the factor, made everything that seemed dead come alive. So there was a power in that.
Trump, he starts a lot of rumors like the shithole countries.
Yeah, Trump is super powerful. I knew it. I thought we needed a Trump, to be honest. We were too divided. We needed somebody to rattle our chains and say, "Yo, come here. I don't care what color you are. Come here. We both hate him, right? Yeah, let's do something, man. We got to do something." Like the things that I hear these organizations doing and preparing for the election. Oh man, where was that? We needed that. The world is going to come alive in 2020, and it's partially because of Trump. Man.
Yeah, and then on rumors and placing that within a cinematic context. What was it? 10 years ago, maybe almost 15 years ago, this website popped up. It was called Flickr, and it was this place. It was after, let's say, Sony's Image Station, right? And it was this place where people could go online and upload their photographs, and everyone had their own gallery, and then they turned into like this social platform. So there was that. So people started sharing these things, and then these phones came along, and these phones started to have like cameras on them. So you could take pretty good photographs, and then from your phone, you could upload it to this site and make friends, and people like them. And then it was really weird because what happened overnight is people became photographers. Yeah. Like everybody was like, so now you've got people who are professional photographers like, man, the jig is up. I had access to this equipment, right? I was in this financial position, and so I could be this thing, and I could say that I was this person. Some big journalists also benefit from the same thing. This person right here who's been on the front porch or wherever that they are, Sunday mornings, they're at the cafe with the coffee, and I mean, this is the journalist. Or this person right here who's been in a position to benefit by way of higher education, these sorts of things. Now we have this thing on Instagram. There are different apps that are emerging that are centering where they've been photography based. They're now centering filmmaking, right? So you can easily, like, your location, Scott, this is your thing, but like people with your phone, you can go to, I want to do a film. I want to document my story or this part of my life, this transformation that I'm going to, this wonderful news that my wife and I are about to announce, all of these things, these pains that I'm going through. I'm going to tell that from this place, and I'm going to say right on top of the story, that's the first thing that people see is this person is in Jamaica, or this person is at the Gene Siskel Film Center, right? And then these tools, these instruments are getting better to enable people to spread their own rumors and to tell their own stories, right? So it's in film and like in the art house, this is something that we're paying attention to. On one hand, yeah, we've got streaming and we've got technology entering our space, but then also, are we prepared to What will we do with people's stories when they are becoming more abundant? What's that space going to look like in 5 years as this technology continues to grow? Are we going to be in a position or position ourselves to where we're able to give these, if that's something that's doing really well, are we going to bring that artist into our cinema and project that on the big screen? How are we going to feed and nurture their growth? So I don't know. These are questions that I have as well, but it spawns from rumor.
All right. We're actually getting close to the end of our time here. I just
Yeah.
got the sort of.
I think we might have one more question
Sure, one
over
more
here.
question. Great.
Sure.
Yeah, that's good. The youth. Yes, perfect.
You guys know me. I'm
Yes.
Rachel. I guess I kind of just wanted to talk about like the okay, so about the Teen Arts Pass, we're passionate about like creating opportunities for teens to witness like professional voice. And I wanted to talk about just how that came into context with each of your careers, like whether that's hip hop or doing things with the Virgil exhibit at the MCA, or even just in your own museum or like in your own company or whatever. I just want to listen to what that voice means and to you guys and like how you use it to spread your own ideas.
For me, I love movies, but I like making them more. The thing that's amazing to me about it is the creative process, and sort of participating in that or helping to contribute, watching an idea take shape. As a location scout, I translate what's on the page to a specific place. And that's often where, for the filmmakers, I often see that's really where their ideas become real. And nurturing that process and watching that happen gives me a great deal of satisfaction. And in terms of, I'm at a place where I'd like to choose the projects or work with people who I believe in, and whose stories I think are important, people who have influence, people who can push an issue that's important to me or tell a story that maybe from a different perspective. In my own personal career, I've worked with incredible filmmakers on huge budget films and seen people blow up Chicago and, just asteroids and robots and all that fun stuff. But at this point, what's really important to me is perspectives that I think create dialogue and create conversation. And I think if I can, and if I'm fortunate enough, being in Chicago, which I already said I think is the best place to tell these stories, it's important to me to work with people who I think they need to be heard. So that's how I look at my own role.
Yes, I guess I grew up in the theater. It had a big impact on me in North Carolina, the Black Theater, and those people were around. A little bit after that, we moved up the coast to D.C., and I saw many of the same people that I was seeing in the theater world in North Carolina. In D.C., my mom was she was a director in this lobbying agency called Trans-Africa. And so Trans-Africa, it's the largest lobbying agency for Africa and the Caribbean. And they were leading fights on apartheid, right, and injustices in Haiti. What was really interesting in these political fights, in these foreign policy fights, in these very black-centered fights that weren't exclusively black American, the artists were in the room too. It wasn't just the learned people who had their academic, accreditation and things like this. The athletes were also in the room. So that was really interesting. So there's this iconic photo that we use in all of our programs. It's got people like Arthur Ashe. It's got people like Randall Robinson was the head of the institution, Harry Belafonte. And this photograph is an image of athletes and artists against apartheid. Like, wow, what? Try to do that today. What? Like, if we get one person, that's cool, right? Like, even the taking a knee is somehow like everyone needs to take a knee. Like, everyone needs to do that. You know, how do we get to the point where, like, one person doing that is, like, everyone needs to do that sometimes. That's what we need to be promoting. Like, why haven't you taken one? So this is just kind of, that's kind of, I suppose, the way that I work and my team works is we censor, in all of our collaborations and things of the sort, we censor the idea, we censor the statement, the sentiment, and around the sentiment we build a program or we build whatever that finished product is, but we don't. In a way, it's as if we feel like art is a privilege. I mean, there are hairbrushes that are considered art. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, no, we're doing these things, and we don't have, like, we're not in a space, like, our land is not secure enough, our water is not secure enough. These sorts of things, we're not secured enough to create things just to be. And it's good. I'm not knocking that. It's cool. But it's also an industry. And for us, it's a means of survival, right? These are instruments of survival. So I think that's what we gather around in what I do. And from that comes expression and things like that might be received as being artful.
I'll just say that as a museum professional, I've sort of had the privilege of being the director of the Jane Addams Hull House Museum, and then also the director of the School of Art and Art History at UIC, and now at the Public Housing Museum. Sometimes people sort of say, oh, your job is so great, you give voice to the voiceless, you know, and I always think of Arundhati Roy's quote where she said, there's no such thing as the voiceless, there's only the intentionally silenced or the preferably unheard, you know, and so for me, I feel like a lot of how I've found my own personal voice is actually moving away from the me towards the we and thinking about how can I be in solidarity and ally to, you know, the struggles of justice that are happening. So like how you find your voice now is, you know, go and join a picket line with the CTU teachers, you know, like what does it mean to actually have a voice is to speak out against injustice wherever you are, you know, and so I sort of feel like that has been what has been so powerful and fulfilling in my life here in Chicago as a cultural activist.
That was beautiful. I'd like to be a part of your exhibit of the museum, right?
Talk,
I like to do a couple of things since I'm last, right? I'm last.
Sure, go.
All right. Ta-da. First thing I like to say is that I create safe spaces for people who awake to now exist in the new them. Right? So I run open mics, different events. I'm doing a Black History Month Heroes costume ball where people can dress up in the legacy and just show up as, you know, whoever you think you are, right? Those types of things. I'm a solutions-based individual, and the vehicle is the arts. So communicating the realities of where we existed and where we're going is how I do it, and I'm going to do it right now. Can I do it right now? Can I? And I have to say, man, that playground in the back where that pile of stuff was, that was my playground. Like before that pile, I don't know how they got that there, but that playground. And I just recently came up with a piece where I was thinking exactly about that playground right there. So for me to be in here is kind of like surreal looking at that. But okay, so I'm gonna need y'all help real quick. All right, and this is how I'm gonna end this. This really communicates Cabrini and where I'm from, the passion, and all that question right there. Okay, you ready? You ready? Yeah, all right. So it's called My Girlfriend. And I need y'all to help me. I'm gonna say, you ain't got no girlfriend, you can't keep no girl around here. Come on, y'all do that with me. Right here. Say, you ain't got no girlfriend, you can't keep no girl around here. Oh, we gotta do better than that. I know. Say, you ain't got no girlfriend, you can't keep no girl around. So I'm living with my brother. We in the projects, right? Yeah. He's 3 years older than me, and we out on that playground, and there's some girls out there, right? And they cute, and I see which one that I like. That's my girlfriend. I already know. I'm like, yeah, that's my girlfriend. Look at my brother, and he say, you ain't got no girlfriend, you can't keep no girl around here. I'm like, man, shut up, be quiet, that's my girl. Go over there, man. They say, you want to play it? Of course we want to play it. Any, mini, money, money, right? And I'm it. You know who I tag first? Of course, her. She tagged me back, I tag her, she tagged me. Everybody else like, we playing too. Right? And so he's like, yeah, we forgot about y'all, right? So, and then I was like, yeah, see, bro, that's my girl. Then mama called us upstairs. It's time to go eat. And I get to the top of the steps and I say, man, he's right. I didn't ask her to be my girlfriend. So tomorrow, I'm going to be on that. I need to hurry up and go to sleep. Mom, you ain't even got to tell me to go to sleep. I'm asleep. Okay, wake up, go to the window. She's out there by herself. What? So I hurry up, clean myself, get ready, put some of my daddy's cologne on. All right, burn. That's okay. I go downstairs. I walk up to her, you know what I'm saying? Lick my lips like LL Cool J about 100 times, right? Excuse me, baby. Then I say, yo, why they running? Pow, 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 pow. Little girl shot dead from stray bullets from gang activity. Another one gone from Chicago streets. And now I look at my brother and he say, you ain't got no girlfriend. You can't keep no girl around. So hopefully that piece really communicates our passion and why we do this and everything. For now.